The little girl held her mother's hand so tightly that her knuckles turned white, as if letting go for even a second would send her back into the nightmare she had just escaped. Her eyes were swollen, her tiny shoulders trembling, and her breaths came out in uneven shivers. When the man stepped closer, his voice low and steady, he knelt to her height and asked just one question, soft, gentle, but shaking with barely restrained emotion. "Who hurt you?" The words hung in the cold evening air like a promise, like a storm forming behind his calm expression. The girl flinched at first, digging her fingers deeper into her mother's palm. And in that moment, something inside the man shifted, the protective instinct, the fierce certainty that he would not leave this moment unanswered. He didn't know yet what had happened. But he knew pain when he saw it. And he knew injustice even faster. He stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving the child's trembling form, and the world around them seemed to pause. Cars passed by, people moved along the sidewalk. Doors opened and shut, but within that small bubble, the mother, the daughter, and the man, everything else faded into nothing. This was the moment everything changed. The day had started like any other for Clara and her 7-year-old daughter, Emily. The two were inseparable, Clara, a hard-working nurse juggling long shifts, and Emily, a bright, shy girl who found comfort in her mother's presence like sunlight in winter. They had moved to a new neighborhood only weeks before. It wasn't the most peaceful place, but it was what Clara could afford after months of medical bills for her own mother back home, and after fighting tooth and nail to secure a safe future for her child. Emily had always loved walking to school. She would skip along beside her mother, talking about the drawings she wanted to make or the books she hoped to read. But that morning was different. Clara noticed her daughter walking unusually close, clutching the strap of her backpack with nervous fingers. "Everything all right, sweetheart?" Clara asked. Emily nodded too quickly. "Just tired." But the tiredness was not in her eyes. It was something else, fear, flickering softly like a candle fighting against wind. Clara brushed her daughter's cheek, wanting to dig deeper, but the clock was merciless. Her shift awaited, and Emily's school bell would ring soon. So she kissed her daughter's forehead, whispered that she loved her, and watched her walk through the school gates. Only later would Clara realize she should have turned back, should have insisted, should have asked again, because sometimes the smallest signs are the ones that matter most. The trouble had begun days earlier. There were two boys at school, older, stronger, always together like a pair of shadows. They had noticed Emily on her first day, the new girl with the quiet voice and the gentle eyes. And some children sense gentleness not as a quality to respect, but as a target to test. They shoved her books. They mocked her shoes. They pulled her backpack, laughed at her drawings, whispered cruel things that only children with too much anger and too little guidance can create. Emily told no one. She didn't want to burden her mother. Clara was carrying enough already. Long shifts, tight finances, exhaustion that settled into her bones. Emily believed that staying silent was a form of love, until the day silence wasn't enough. When Clara arrived to pick her daughter up, she didn't find Emily at the front gate as usual. Instead, she saw her small figure near the far corner of the schoolyard, sitting alone on a bench with her knees drawn to her chest. Clara rushed forward. "Emily." Her daughter looked up, and the sight nearly broke her. Emily's eyes were red, her cheeks blotchy, her lower lip quivering. Clara knelt, cupping the girl's face. "Sweetheart, what happened? Who did this?" Emily didn't speak. She stood up, walked toward her mother, and buried her face in Clara's stomach, clutching her shirt so tightly it stretched. Clara's heart pounded. Something inside her roared with fear and rage. She picked Emily up. Her daughter was too big to be carried usually, but in that moment, she felt weightless, and held her close. On the other side of the school fence, a man was watching. His name was Gabriel Hart. A former military instructor, now a crisis counselor for at-risk youth, Gabriel had spent years learning to read people, not through what they said, but through what they carried in their eyes. He had been speaking to the school administration that afternoon about implementing an anti-bullying program. As he walked out, he saw Clara rushing to her daughter. He saw the panic, the anguish, the protective force only a mother can summon. He didn't know them, but instinct made him move closer. The moment he approached, Emily stiffened and clung even harder to her mother's hand. Her fear was not directed at him, but at the memory of what had happened. So Gabriel stopped one step away and lowered his voice. "Ma'am, I don't mean to intrude. I just want to help. I work with the school." Clara looked up at him, her eyes full of worry. She didn't speak. Gabriel crouched to Emily's level. Even then, he didn't reach out. He didn't touch her. He simply softened his expression and said the words that opened everything. "Who hurt you?" Emily's lips parted, but no sound came out. She was trembling, gripping her mother's hand so hard Clara felt her fingers going numb. Gabriel had seen this before. Children broken down not by single events, but by repeated wounds. Fear carved slowly, day by day. He knew that if she didn't speak now, the silence might last months, or years. But he also knew he could not force her. So he shifted his focus to Clara. Let's step inside. A quiet place. No pressure for her to talk. Just safety. Clara hesitated, but safety was a language every mother understood. She nodded. Together they walked back into the school, Emily glued to her mother's side. And that was the beginning. Inside the counselor's office, the room felt warmer, softer, like a quiet cocoon tucked away from the world. Gabriel invited them to sit. Emily stayed on Clara's lap, still shaking. He kept his voice gentle. "Emily, sweetheart, you're safe here. Nobody will be angry. Nobody will hurt you again. You can take your time." Minutes passed. Finally, Emily whispered, almost inaudibly, "They pushed me." Clara tightened her hold. "Who?" "Two boys," Emily murmured. They told me I was nothing. They pushed me near the stairs. They said if I told anyone, they'd make it worse." Clara's entire body went rigid. "They hurt you on purpose." Emily nodded. "And this wasn't the first time," Gabriel added quietly. He wasn't asking. He was certain. Emily's silence confirmed it. Clara's eyes filled with tears, anger and guilt hitting her all at once. Gabriel leaned forward. "Emily, thank you for telling us. What they did is not your fault. And it ends today. I promise you that." Emily looked up at him for the first time, something flickering behind her tears, hope. That was all he needed. The next hours unfolded like a storm breaking open. Gabriel summoned the principal, the teachers, and eventually the parents of the two boys. Clara stayed beside her daughter the entire time, her protective instincts sharpening with each detail revealed. The boys denied everything at first. Their parents scoffed, insisting their sons wouldn't do such a thing. But the school cameras told the truth. Footage captured the boys pushing Emily near the stairwell, pulling her backpack, laughing as she stumbled. When the truth was undeniable, the parents' faces collapsed, some in shame, some in anger at their own children. Clara remained silent throughout the confrontation. Not out of weakness, but out of a controlled fury so powerful it spoke louder than shouting ever could. Gabriel prepared a detailed action plan, disciplinary measures, counseling for the boys, safety protocols for Emily, and regular follow-ups.